Okay, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We appreciate this is our first of this series of our Anchor Audio University webinar and educational training webinars. We appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us today. Our topic today is AIR versus AnchorLink, how and when to use these technologies. Our presenter today is Cy Bates. He's our Director of Product Development. And just a little briefing about him. Cy is the Director of Product Development. He's previously served as a Director of Manufacturing for Anchor Audio for the last 7 years. And during his time, he collaborates with sales, marketing, and our dealer network to provide the best solutions for our customers. And there's Cy for you. So with that, just quickly, we have a chat capability as well. If you do have any questions, please go ahead and submit those via the chat, and we'll take those questions at the end of the webinar time frame. At this time, we're just going to mute everybody so that we can proceed with the presentation. So Cy, take it away.
Thank you for having me, Jenna, and I hope everyone's doing well out there. I really enjoy doing these kind of things about educating. And in fact, at the end of this presentation, you'll get my direct email address. If you have any ideas about future webinar or training topics, feel free to email me and I'll start collecting those ideas. So AIR versus AnchorLink seemed like a logical first topic to cover because it is a common issue when a newcomer comes in, whether it's a new hired anchor or new dealer. Exactly what is the difference between AIR and AnchorLink? So what you expect to learn in this webinar is what do the AIR and AnchorLink wireless do, how they can work together, and ultimately how to solve your customers' problems. And hopefully, maybe you'll consider Anchor for solutions you didn't previously consider. So one of the great things about Anchor Audio is the all-in-one solution that we offer, which is very helpful in terms of setting up, transportability, and operation. But with that all-in-one solution can provide some complexity given that so much is happening in one sound system. And in fact, depending on what features you get on our sound systems, you could have up to 3 completely different wireless technologies. And those would be Bluetooth, AIR, and AnchorLink. Now, I'm not going to cover Bluetooth in this presentation, mainly because it's a very ubiquitous technology and people pretty much know what it is. I will say that our Bluetooth, we use a higher class Bluetooth than the competition. So we get a range of 300 feet compared to the typical 30-foot range you're probably going to see out there. And it does come standard in our battery-powered PA systems. Besides the acclaim, however, we hope to get an acclaim very soon. But this presentation is about the AIR versus AnchorLink, our 2 proprietary wireless technologies. They are related in some ways, so it's very common for why you get them confused or what exactly they do. As I talk about their differences and how they can use together, I will bring up some wireless ranges. I will say that although range does depend on the environment you're in, the ranges that I give are very realistic and not just theoretical that you might see in other tech specs. So starting off with the AIR. The purpose of the AIR is to wirelessly connect 2 or more sound systems together. Where before the AIR, you have to use a 50 or 100-foot cable to bring 2 systems together. Now you can transmit that signal wirelessly. It's used on the Bigfoot, Beacon, Liberty, Go-Getter, and Mega. The frequency is the 900 megahertz, and we went with that frequency because it's license-free, not that crowded, and it gets a pretty good range. And the range is, in fact, 200 plus feet. I say plus because our systems that are higher off the ground will get better range. The ones that are typically used on speaker stands, like the Liberty, Go-Getter, and Megabox, are probably going to get you closer to 300 feet. Now the AIR, the one key thing to know about the AIR, it is a broadcast, which means it goes from one to many in one direction. And the analogy I love to use is like the radio in your car, right? So you have a radio station that's transmitting its signal in all directions, and as long as your car is within range and tuned to the right station, you are going to pick up the signal. And that's exactly what the AIR does with our setup. For part numbers to kind of be familiar with, the X would signify an AIR transmitter, an R signifies an AIR receiver, and the AIR signifies a wireless companion, which is slave only. And a very common thing that some people get confused with is the R and AIR. If you have want a more detailed answer, I can answer it later, but the short answer is the R is a standalone unit that can be used with or by itself, where the AIR is a slave, so it has to be used with another unit, it cannot be used by itself. but it comes at a lower price point, so it is very appealing for a lot of people. Building an air network, there's only a couple of rules you need to remember. The first is one system needs to have the air transmitter, which is the X. You can now have only one X on any given network. You can have an unlimited number of air receivers, whether they're R or air, as long as they are within range of the X units. And I go back to the analogy with the car radio versus the radio station, and that's exactly what we're dealing with here. First example, this setup here, we have a Bigfoot XU4 in the middle, and it's transmitting its signal out to 2 units. There's a Beacon RU4 on the left and Liberty 2 Air on the right. The Bigfoot has the X, we know that is the transmitter. The 2 units, the Liberty and Beacon, are within range, and they both have receivers. The Beacon has the R, the Liberty has the Air, so this setup is completely acceptable. One thing I like about this setup is it really highlights the fact that it doesn't matter what systems you're using. You can definitely interchange between Beacons, Liberties, Megas, however you want. And in fact, I have seen some people order a Bigfoot and will add on Liberty Airs to it to help disperse the sound. So all that matters is if you have a transmitter and if you have receivers. Our second example, we changed the Beacon RU4 to an XU4, and right there, that violates one of the rules we talked about, because you can only have one X. So this here would not work because you have 2 X's. The Beacon would not receive anything because it's not a receiver at all. And in fact, if the Beacon and Bigfoot are on the same channel, they'll actually counteract each other, and there'll be no signal for anything to receive. So to fix that, you want to make sure you have only one X, and then the rest are either R's or Airs. And so what we do is we change the Beacon back to an RU4. All right, that covers the air. So now we're going to move on to the AnchorLink, which is our wireless microphone technology. So the purpose of the AnchorLink is to connect a wireless microphone to a sound system. We debuted it a couple years ago. We're really proud of it. It has performed really well out in the field. We've been able to offer features like the mute and volume control on the microphone, which the competition doesn't do. And it is like made in USA, like everything else we do here. The frequency is 1.9 gigahertz. We chose that frequency because it's a great digital range to use, really good range. It's not going to be interfered with when you're talking about UHF band with TV stations, and it's not going to be interfered with Bluetooth or Wi-Fi up on the 2.4 gigahertz. So it kind of seemed like the best of both worlds. Range, we get 300 feet line of sight. The digital connection is a one-to-one connection, so it's not like the air, which was a broadcast. This is a connection between one microphone and one sound system only. One microphone cannot go to multiple sound systems. But with that provides a robustness because they're actually talking to each other back and forth. And what that does allow is if there's ever a signal for whatever reason that's not up to par, they'll actually both change to a cleaner signal. So it does provide a more robust wireless link. For part numbers, the part numbers you should know, the WH-Link and WB-Link are the AnchorLink transmitters. WH-Link, the H standing for handheld, and the WB-Link, the B standing for belt pack. The U2 and U4 would signify the AnchorLink receivers, and I'll go more into that in just a minute. To have a little side conversation, I just want to bring this up because sometimes this can get a little confusing in terms of microphone choice. So when you buy a sound system with receivers, you would want microphones to go with it. And really, you have 2 choices. Choice 1, you get a handheld microphone, and that is it. Choice 2, if you wanted a belt pack, which is the more hands-free option, you would get a belt pack and you would choose one of the 4 belt pack microphones. And those 4 options are headband, lapel, collar, and ultralight. And those are actually the order of the popularity that people typically buy from us. Now, if you get a package, what we actually do is to throw in an extra lapel mic for free. So you get a belt pack and a headband standard, and then we'll give you the lapel for free. So you get the 2 most common belt pack microphones in one set. And to kind of give you an idea of the different combinations, our big dual package, which is a very popular package for the Bigfoot, comes with the Bigfoot XU2 and 2 microphone choices. So those 2 microphone choices would either be 2 handhelds, 2 belt packs, or 1 handheld and 1 belt pack, depending on what your needs are. So to establish an AnchorLink connection, it's important to know what the U2 and U4 in this SKU tells you. And what it does tell you is how many wireless microphones it can handle. The U2 can handle up to 2 wireless microphones. The U4 can handle up to 4 wireless microphones. And just to repeat, the wireless microphone or belt pack can only be connected to 1 sound system at a time. Moving on to an example of the AnchorLink. This was actually one that I was inspired recently with the whole COVID situation, there was hospitals that were building outdoor hospital tents to increase their capacity. And so they were having nurses and patients under these tents and needed a way to be able to communicate to the whole tent area at one time. So at first they were thinking about only needing 2 nurses to talk to one sound system at a time. And this setup is perfectly acceptable. We have a lib2U2 there, so we know that this Liberty can handle up to 2 wireless microphones, and we have only 2 nurses that need to speak to it, so we're good to go. This is a good setup. Example 2 is then they actually realized they wanted 4 nurses to be talking to the system at once. And this would not work because Liberty can only handle 2 wireless microphones, but there's 4 that want to talk to it. So the way to correct this situation is you want to change the Liberty to U2 to a U4. Then that is good to be able to handle 4 people talking to it at one time. This here is a comparison table kind of highlighting the differences between the Air and the AnchorLink. The only thing I really want to highlight here is the how to connect section. Both those steps are relatively easy, and it's really for most people, they only have to do it the very first time they get the system. And after that, they probably never have to touch it ever again. But there is links at the end of this presentation that I'll provide that'll show you how to set up your Air and how to set up your AnchorLink. All right, now that we've covered what the Air and AnchorLink are individually, let's now talk about how they're going to be used together. So this person here wants to be able to broadcast his voice out of both of these beacons. Now, some people initially would think, just send the microphone to both beacons, problem solved. And that's understandable given what our previous wireless microphone technology did. It would do it in this way. But as we talked about, our wireless microphone can only go to one system at one time. So this setup would not work the way it is. So the way that you would achieve this is you would send your microphone to the Beacon 2 XU4, and then you would use the Air technology to send the Beacon 2 XU4 to the Beacon 2 RU4. By doing that, then the voice would come out of both sound systems at the same time. Another setup, and this was kind of a extreme situation, but it did come up recently, so I wanted to highlight both the potential and the limitations for the Air and AnchorLink. So one person wanted to see if there's a way to get 8 different people coming out of 2 Bigfoots. So taking it step by step, the first 4 people would connect to the Bigfoot 2 XU4. That's totally fine. They established connection, and then the voices of all 4 people would be coming out. Peoples 5 through 8 would connect to the Beacon 2 RU4 on the right. No problem there, given that it's U4. And then peoples 5 through 8 would be coming out of the Bigfoot on the right. But the question is what happens when you create an Air connection between the 2? Because you have an X and you have an R, so an Air connection is definitely possible. And the key takeaway as we go through is remember that it's a one-way direction, that it goes from the Bigfoot X4 to the RU4. It does not go the other way. And so what happens is when we bring back the situation, when peoples 1 through 4 connect to the Big from the left, their voices are coming out of both Bigfoots because the Air connection is transmitting everything from the Big from the left over to the Bigfoot on the right. But when you connect the Bigfoot on the right with the peoples 5 through 8, what happens here is, and as you can see, the Bigfoot 2 RU4 on the right has all the people's voices 1 through 8. Perfect. But look at the Bigfoot on the left with the XU4. Only voices 1 through 4 because there's no way to get people's 5 through 8 back over to the Bigfoot XU4. So that kind of shows you that one of the 2 Bigfoots will get all 8 people, but not both. And so that kind of shows you the full kind of hardcore example of what you can do with the Air and AnchorLink. All right, with that said, now is there any questions?
Yeah, so Sai, we did get a few questions here. I'll just, via our chat, and I'll just pose those to you now. And if you want to just go ahead and answer those for the audience, that'd be great. The first question is, can you provide more detail about the differences between R and Air?
Yeah, that's fair. I figured someone would ask that. So the R, every unit that you can get an X with, you can also get an R with, even if it's not directly in our price book, just as an FYI. So an R unit is a fully loaded unit. It's got the Bluetooth. You can have wireless AnchorLink receivers in it. It has the line ins, the line out, everything. That's an R system would have everything. So you could use it with an X for a very large venue, or you can split up those 2 units and use them separately. The Air can only be used with an X. It can never be used by itself, and it doesn't have line ins, doesn't have Bluetooth, none of that. So it's a lower price point. It's a more slimmed down version, but it can be used with an X, and a lot of people do like the Air because it is that lower price point. You do get less, but it does serve their need very well.
Okay, thank you. So we have another question that came in. Can you have different Air networks in the same area working at the same time?
Yeah, okay, I think, yeah, what this person's saying is, could you have two different X units transmitting on two different signals? And the answer is absolutely yes. Let's go back to our radio analogy, right? When you're driving your car, you probably have dozens of different radio stations to choose from, and they're all transmitting at the same time. The question is your car is only going to receive one of them at a time, and it depends on which one you're tuned to. So you can have two X's definitely in the same area, but they would be transmitting totally different signals, and you can't use them together.
Okay, thank you, Sai. And it looks like we have one more question coming in. Does Wi-Fi 2.4 gigahertz interfere with AnchorLink 1.9 gigahertz?
So from what I can tell, directly, no, it does not. We haven't seen that happen. The one time that we go to Infocom every year, and when you go to a convention center that has probably a dozen Wi-Fi signals and probably 24 Bluetooth signals in your area, there could be a potential for some interference because the 1.9 gigahertz is close to the 2.4, that if you're in a very extreme situation, you could expect maybe some interference. But overall, I haven't heard of anything in a more realistic situation where Wi-Fi would interfere with it.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for answering those questions for us and the audience. That's all I have that came in via the chat at this time. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Sai?
No, I'll just wrap it up by saying this presentation is being recorded and should be up on the dealer portal probably by the end of the day. As I mentioned before, those YouTube links on how to connect with your Air and AnchorLink are actually provided on this page right here. So feel free to check those out. And then here's my email address. If you have any questions on this particular presentation or any questions in general, I love helping people out, whether they're dealers or customers. So by all means, please send me anything you've got, including, given that I'm the Director of Product Development, I'm always looking for new ideas or features, so feel free to share those as well.
Okay, fantastic. So I think that wraps it up. Thank you, everybody, for attending today. We appreciate your time and all the great questions. Thank you to Sai. We will end this session at this time. Thank you again, and have a great day.